A chance encounter with a counterintelligence agent makes a Canadian man on vacation in London a target of both police and a mysterious group known only as the 39 Steps in Alfred Hitchcock's 1935 thriller of the same name. And that's the movie we're unearthing today on Movie Bones. Man, I just thought of this, but why didn't we wait until our 39th episode to do this movie? It's coming up, you know.
It's a conspiracy.
Oh, man, yeah. It's like, if you did do the 39th episode as the 39 Steps, people would read a conspiracy into that. You know, you could read a conspiracy into the fact that it's not the 39th episode, or you could just go ahead and, you know, do that either way. That's the great thing about conspiracies. You can always make them fit, you know, whatever happens.
Who is the shadowy figure that is affecting us from making this the 39th episode?
Yes, folks. For our episode today, I'm just going to recap the movie itself. The 39 Steps tells the tale of Henny. He's a Canadian tourist. He's catching a show in a London vaudeville act that kind of goes haywire when a gunshot rings out mid-performance. In the panic, a young lady imposes herself on him. She claims to be a counterintelligence agent with highly important information on a group called the 39 Steps, which, she says, she needs to get to her superiors. Of course, she's quickly killed, and he's quickly implicated in her murder, and he has to go on the run to figure out who the 39 Steps are, and of course, to clear his name. That's the gist of it, and if it sounds familiar, it's probably because you've seen a lot of conspiracy movies with similar setups. It's the random innocent who's suddenly caught up in powerful forces they didn't even know existed 2 minutes before. And I have some deep thoughts about that whole genre or subgenre as it is. But before we do that, let's just talk about the movie itself. What was your response to the film, Ryan?
I don't want anybody to think that I'm saying anything bad about the film, but it was all over the place for me. and I say that because I will give Alfred Hitchcock his due here. And I'm a fan. You know, we're both fans of Hitchcock. Mm-hmm. Maybe not everything he does, but we're both fans. It left me surprised, like every single step of the way. I was sitting there going, okay, I didn't really see this coming. And I'll be honest with you too, I'm the type of person that just for fun and to see if I'm right, and I was very clearly wrong, like 10, 20 minutes into the movie. I want to make that very clear. But I'll always, when I know it's a mystery type of movie or has some kind of mystery element to it, I'll pinpoint a person and I go, that's them. That's the bad guy. And I'll be honest, I thought for a second there until, like, when that woman first meets up with the guy, Henny, is that how you say his name?
Henny? I think they pronounce it Henny in the film.
Henny. When she first met up with him, I thought, it's him. He's the guy.
What, you mean Henny himself?
Yeah, well, it was before we knew anything about him.
Oh, okay. All right, gotcha.
I thought maybe he would be the guy. And then maybe it was kind of going to be a film where she's sort of on the run. And then she walks into that bedroom and everything just falls apart. And I was going, oh, never mind.
Yeah. and you had a kind of a different reaction than I had because I was watching it, I guess. I don't know if it's the kind of movies I've been exposed to, but there are a number of things that happen in the film. And I can go through, like, I actually made a list. Kind of like cliches that come from the conspiratorial subgenre of, you know, the innocent being chased. You know, he's just the man on the street one day, and the next moment he's in the middle of this world-changing, you know, events all revolving around a secret cabal of whatever. And so you've got things like he kisses a random girl to throw off his attackers, you know.
Yeah.
I've seen that. It's like random people talking about the murder he's implicated in as he walks by, and that happens multiple times. Stalling for time with unexpected public speaking. He's confused for somebody else at a public speaking event. He just kind of wanders his way in, kind of like, oops, how did that happen? And then he quickly takes the stage and he starts talking as if, you know, he's the guy that everyone's expected to talk because, you know, and he's just trying to buy time until he can figure out what to do. That's another one I've seen before. So there's a lot of things like that. And also, yeah, the cops are actually baddies in disguise. using a parade as a means of escape. There's one in particular where there's the guy who's actually the bad guy, who's actually in charge of the 39 steps, is like, but he doesn't know he's the bad guy. But he's like, nope, that's him. The guy with he's got the finger that's missing. The guy with the finger missing.
See, that's where you kind of get to that point of like, okay, all right, I see where this is going. And when I say I was surprised along steps of the way, I was a bit more surprised that he just didn't really have any help at all. If you know what I mean?
Yeah, he just seems to be...
And the one person who sort of, and I'm using quotation marks, sort of helps him is reluctant to do so because she's thrust into this whole entire ordeal and everything.
You talking about the one he ends up falling for? I
can't
think of her name.
And like I thought for a second there too, and this is what Alfred Hitchcock does. And we know, I want to make this very clear, we know that the actresses oftentimes did not have a good time with Alfred Hitchcock. Understand that with what I'm going to say. He does a good job of thrusting women into the spotlight and making their characters important for the most part. I thought it was kind of neat. There's this theme that the people that did seem to listen to him were the women in the story. You know what I mean? You have I call him a farmer. You have the farmer's wife, and then you have her. She's like the only person that really starts to be on his side. And again, I know it's reluctance. It's reluctance when they're doing this. Most of these are people doing it reluctantly. But I mean, it's just them that are kind of moving the story along and also providing that safety net of sorts that the whole world isn't against him. Because there are times where you can tell he's looking at everyone going, everyone is against me and nobody's there to help me.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, he even says that kind of in the speech, if you think about it.
The speech itself, what he does with that moment is actually kind of neat in how he's implicating the people around him. Overall, I think it's like, do you see some of the other things that some of the criticisms sometimes leveled at Alfred Hitchcock's work in this case, particularly with how the characters are developed? It comes through as more weak here than, it's varying degrees, folks. It's always varying degrees, but this does seem to be one of his more shallower characters, at least for the leads, at least, because everything they do and everything they react to is all just pretty much reaction. That's perfect. That's a perfect way to look at it, because his growth is really just survival. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like it is a survival
That's all he's
show.
trying to do.
Yeah.
He's just trying to survive.
It always helps if I get a little bit more about their interior lives a little bit. But, I know that Alfred Hitchcock isn't the guy you go to for necessarily that kind of a story. Usually, So it all hinges really on the mystery aspects of it. I will say, Mr. Memory seems like an act that Google would put out of business. Doesn't it seem like that? Mr. Memory.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I thought what they did was cool with his character, because I really wasn't expecting him to come back. Although looking on it after it happened, I thought, yeah, that should have made perfect sense that he'd show back up, because, he's clearly, like, what he does is so unique. Almost like Chekhov's gun. You've introduced this character. He is doing something, but
he's very distinct.
It's very trivial what he's doing at the time, and then he matters in the end. When I was watching that scene, I was like, man, I feel bad for this guy.
And he's got to have, I'm going to say it right now, I'm going to posthumously award him the Guinness World Record for the strangest last words spoken by a fictional character right before they die.
Yeah.
He's got this whole monologue of very specific scientific jargon. And he said, oh, I'm glad I got that off my chest. It's spoken like a confession. But it's like, that's just going to be the weirdest deathbed confession / last words I think I've ever heard. That was just what popped in my head. It made me kind of giggle a lot. But one of the other things it did too is, you tell me this. Because Hitchcock has done this multiple times, is like he'll transition from one scene to the next where the first scene is ending, it's got someone screaming, and at the same time he overlaps a train whistle or a foghorn or whatever that comes in the next scene, And for me, it's like, I get he's trying to use it as a transition, but for me, it strikes laughter in me. But I can see where some people might find it startling, but I just laugh.
It's probably because you're used to it.
I don't see it often enough for that. It just struck me funny. I just gotta say, it just struck me funny.
But you see it in his films, don't you?
Every now and then, yeah. It's not
Yeah.
like one of his more prevalent ones, but it is something I've
Yeah.
seen in other films of his. But yeah,
I get it.
yeah.
I get what you're saying, and I could see, if you had said it makes me jump every time, I would have also understood that. We haven't talked about one of them, but, we've seen multiple of his films where he uses a train. So, like having that transition whistle kind of like that, it does
Yeah.
make a little bit of sense.
It does.
And everything. But yeah, I get what you're saying.
It's just one of those things like if something is even just a hair off, I can see it's like it goes from being shocking to being funny. And it won't work on everybody. I fully admit this won't work on everybody. Maybe there's people out there. If you chime in the comment section, tell us what it did for you. If it made you laugh, or if it made you jump a little bit, or just kind of made you go, huh? Or whatever your reaction is. Let us know in the comments.
I'll go back to a point you brought up a little bit earlier. Since it's a conspiracy movie, you're led to not always necessarily wonder who to trust, but who is a part of this story and who isn't a part of the story. Sometimes that's just where you go in conspiracy movies. And like the train scene was big for me because it was the two guys he was sitting in the car with, especially, I think the guy was kind of balding, but he was wearing glasses. He looked so suspicious. And he looked at Hanny so suspiciously as well. Like, that was a big highlight of the film for me, was that particular scene.
There's a deeper issue, I guess you could say, I kind of have with conspiracy films, and not all of them either, because, I think it has to do with how well conspiracies are represented in movies compared to how they are in real life. Because there are real conspiracies in real life. And if you've looked around, are you familiar with at all with, and this is not a real one, by the way, folks, I do not believe in this, but have you heard of the QAnon movement and that kind of thing?
Yeah,
okay.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
So you're aware of it, definitely. Okay,
yeah,
good.
Of course.
Then I have to explain it to you, and I'm sure you guys can look it up if you want to know what it is. But it's like the real conspiracies versus it's like Hollywood. When Hollywood goes full Hollywood on a conspiracy, you get to something that has like this, like it's like a smooth sounding name, like this 39 Steps. It's very mysterious, but it implies this kind of world altering cabal and stuff like that. And it kind of feeds into this idea. And I think that one actually taps into something in our psyche that potentially could be unhealthy. That's what I kind of draw the line a little bit on this and I think it has to do with the fact that, we as human beings are very vulnerable to, even if our lives are going really well right now, it's like we have this little fear in the back of our head that says, at any moment a tornado could rip you apart and take away your home and suck you up in the air and you'd be dead and your whole family be gone. And you have this fear of like this, but things are going well, but it could all go wrong tomorrow and something bad can happen. And we don't deal with what that does to us. Like, how do we process that? If we process it, it's like, well, that's just one of the facts of life, then that's healthy. It's like something you have to deal with as part of life is the risk of death and the risk of tragedy. But when you say, well, no, tragedy doesn't make any sense. I don't want to have to deal with that. It's too much for me to accept that there are random things in the world that can happen to me or to my family or on a large scale even. And that is unimaginable to me. I can't wrap my head around that. I don't accept that. And it's not like it's a conscious decision, but it's like, I can't accept that. And once you go there, then you start to think, well, if there is a cabal of people, that's flesh and blood, that can be fought. And I think that's part of the appeal. It's not for everybody. I'm not saying it's for everybody, but that does kind of transfer onto a certain segment of people, I think. Look at like The Matrix, it's if you pull back all the sci-fi elements, what you have is a kind of a global conspiracy, a one that's kind of it's all encompassing, it's all powerful in many ways, but it's a real thing in the movie for the sake of the movie, right? And that's what even people get the idea of the red pill. Are you red pilled? Do you exist outside of that control mechanism? Anyway, it's a deeper subject. I just wanted to touch on it because this movie does kind of, in the fact that it does have this kind of very nebulous, kind of not quite all powerful, but at least it's big enough in scale that it can affect world events, put it that way.
We do desperately want to pull back the curtain and see what's on the other side. See the stinky underbelly of high society. Because it is high society. In this movie, you're in a world where it does kind of do that. But at the end of the day, like in a story like this, one aspect that you might be looking for, one ending that you might be longing for, is you want to see the whole thing toppled, because people want that.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you don't actually, there's nothing that's toppled. In fact, the truth of the matter is, one cog in the machine that is the 39 steps is neutralized. And we don't actually even know if he's fully neutralized.
No, you don't.
Because who takes him? Who takes him? It's the cops that take him. Are they to be trusted? There's not been a single time during this whole entire movie where any cop is to be trusted, whether they be a Scotland Yard or whether they be just your local police. But none of them have ever shown to be trusted. All that happens is, he shoots a guy and he takes a run for it, and they surround him. They don't kill him. Now, you can assume, if you know anything about conspiracy movies, you can assume that, he outed himself, so he's probably going to get taken out by others that are a part of this organization.
You could think that, sure, yeah.
And that's kind of the deal with Alfred Hitchcock. He doesn't really leave things on a happy note. He leaves them kind of melancholy. The resolution of this film is the guy is seemingly free. Hanny, the woman, is as well, and the memory is let out into the world for the most part, but it's off it's off his chest. So because it doesn't resolute us, it can feed into that, see, there's conspiracies all around us. I will say there are issues on the other side of the curtain that we probably don't see, that we probably don't know. I don't lean into conspiracies as much as I might have used to for various reasons. I do think it's unhealthy, for starters, and some things you can just chalk up to people, not everybody that goes into the government is a part of some grand conspiracy.
And if you look at, I like to think of, at least in the real world, I think of the Watergate break-in, Nixon's break-in with to steal information from the Democratic National Convention. It was a smash and grab, hastily done. It was not careful. It's part of the reason why it came out. It's like they're exposed, right? Because it's usually just kind of impulsive, this impulsive thing. And if in a cinematic equivalent, I think of, have you seen the movie Fargo?
I actually haven't. Okay. I need to sit down and watch it eventually.
Yeah,
but
I mean,
haven't.
It's not for kids. It's not for kids, folks. It's a Coen Brothers movie. It's not for kids. But it shows you in a small scale way. It's a small scale conspiracy to kidnap a guy's wife, his own wife, so that he can kind of extort his own father-in-law, who has money he doesn't have, for money that he thinks he deserves. But the whole way it's done is it shows you that it's the stupidity of conspiracies. Conspiracies tend to be, I think, a lot more either dull or just stupid. And there's entertainment you can get out of that because they burn hot and fast. But they tend to be either, very impetuously done and they get caught. Or it's just like a combination of just like the weather patterns. You have, if you want to think of like the bigger tragedies in life, if you wanted to see like World War II as a big conspiracy, it's like some people do think like, oh, well, clearly because the military industrial complex or whatever wanted, to sell more arms or whatever, they put the pieces together to have this happen. It's like, well, not really. It's like a cold front meeting a body of warm, moist air, like to create a thunderstorm. It's all the conditions have to be right, but no one could orchestrate a thunderstorm in their backyard if they wanted to. And there's a lot of elements like that things just go happen in real life, It's like, no, it's just a confluence of the way things were that no one put the pieces together because you'd have to have almost omniscient levels of understanding of the world to be able to predict this accurately, consistently. You know what I'm saying?
And you know what humans don't have?
What's that?
They don't have that.
They don't have that, no.
I want to rag on the police in this film real quick. And really any film that has to do with any kind of British police force, Scotland Yard, any of that kind of stuff. I do think it's quite funny. And Hitchcock had no reason to bring this up, but they were so stinking good at tracking this guy. I mean, it's just like anywhere he went, they were all of a sudden right there beside him or right there on his tail. And there was at one point when I was watching this film, because it's a conspiracy film, I was watching the film and going, man, if y'all were this good, y'all could have caught Jack the Ripper by now.
See, what you don't know is that the 39 Steps had already invented cell phones and tracking technology so that they were able to put one on him and then track him. See, I got it all figured out. See, there it is. Boom. Mic drop.
Probably. But, like I do enjoy a good conspiracy movie.
Yeah, as long as you don't take it too seriously, there's nothing wrong with it per se.
Yeah. My advice to anyone out there who maybe dabbles with conspiracies is go read everything. Like, read everything you can. Not just the point of view that makes you feel the best, but the point of view that challenges your thinking, challenges the way that you're leaning. Because when you do that, it'll help your critical thinking skills go up. And that's a good thing. I'm not saying like you can't critically think. I'm saying it will help your critical thinking skills go up. And when you do that, you could start looking at some conspiracies out there or some non-conspiracies out there and saying, wait a minute, this doesn't add up.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
The only thing I'd add to that, I think it's good advice. The only thing I'd add to that is do not attribute to malice what can be explained by stupidity or just life. There's a great Chesterton quote. I don't have it at the tip of my tongue, but he talks about a certain kind of madness where this falls into it. And maybe someday we'll have occasion to actually pull it up and talk about it more deeply. But in any case, well, that's our show for this week, folks, on the 39 Steps. Remember, if you're enjoying this shared trip through movies that predate modern blockbuster films, to go ahead and follow Ryan and me on your podcast purveyor of choice. Leave a comment on YouTube or suggest what films you might think we should do next on our Facebook page. And about that next film, Ryan, I've left you some options to pick from, and I haven't chosen specifically, but I gave you a list of them. Why don't you go ahead and see what we're going to be watching next week?
Oh, man, it's a toss-up between Facing the Crowd and Seven Brides for Seven Brothers.
This is a serious one, so why don't we go Seven Brides for Seven Brothers? Because I have a feeling that the Facing the Crowd is going to be more serious.
So next week, we'll be watching a timely musical classic that is probably going to make us look at society today and go, oh, this is not good. not society today, but society back then in today going, oh, that's not good. But a timeless musical classic, Seven Brides for Seven Brothers.
I've never seen this. This is going to be I have no idea what I'm in for, folks. So I
will say, I'm not going to say this is going to hold up for me. For some reason, I actually liked this movie when I was a kid. So when it was on, my mom would watch it. I'd sit there and maybe watch, wouldn't sit there the whole entire time, but I'd watch quite a few scenes in it. But I'm not coming into it with nostalgia. I'll tell you all that.
Okay. Well, I will be eagerly awaiting to see your updated review of the film. So in any case, folks, I think that's about all we got for today. So until next week, guys, and until next week, Ryan, see you later.